الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في قرآن المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا صدق الله مولانا العظيم. Honorable guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We begin by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His blessing upon us all to gather today here to talk and learn about an important subject, an aspect of the Islamic guidance and teachings concerning the health and environment. The ayah I recited before you, it means that today we have completed and perfected your deen, al-Islam. And also we have perfected our blessings upon you, and we are pleased. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I'm pleased upon you to have Islam as your deen, the way of life. So as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator, who has created us, and He has put us upon this earth as His khulafa, as His vicegerents, at the same time He has given us the guidance in all aspects of our life. And this also includes the matters related to the health and environment. The problems in the health field and environment which we see today in the world in general and in North America, in particular where we live, it's our country, there are a lot of ways that these issues and problems are being addressed. But there is one aspect which is missing, and that is, what does Islam has to say about it? The guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the mankind. What are the guiding principles? Has Islam given any guidance? And the Muslims and this ummah, which is to testify to the truth of Islam to the mankind, in its 1400 years and more of its history, has it done its job in this area also, the area of the health and environment? This is the question that we want to study in this session today. And we have with us learned scholars and speakers who have done extensive work in these areas. But we find out, and we will learn more about it, that there is a very rich heritage of knowledge and guidance in the area of health and environment. In the time when the Muslims were the leading force on this globe, they were the one who were leading also in the area of medicine and surgery, and also in the environment, because they received the nur, the guidance, the light from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Qur'an, Sunnah, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The guiding principles were given in this Sharia, in this Hidayah. And based upon those principles, then the Muslim scholars and the scientists and the researchers, they carried out their research work and study. And then they developed the field of medicine and surgery, and also in the field of environment. And that was the only guidance available at the time. Today we know and we find that in the Western scholars and scientists, they are the one who are leading this field. But the fact is, which has been hidden from the eyes of even the Muslims, unfortunately, that in this area the Muslim scientists and researchers were the one who have done a monumental job. Their textbooks were the leading textbooks and authorities for the mankind to find guidance. And they were translated into different languages of the world. And they were the standard textbooks in different fields of medicine, surgery, and also in the environment and so on. So where did this knowledge come from and how did this disappear? So much so that today it is not easily available even to look at and to study. This is what we're going to learn, that it was the guidance of Qur'an and Sunnah, Prophet ﷺ, which gave them the principles, and they did the research, and then they achieved to these heights and the zenith of research in these fields. And today there is a need that such work should be brought back into the information and also for the use of the mankind, because there is a great need for it. It's our responsibility as Muslims to do the work in this area and again provide the leadership to the mankind, because this is the way of righteousness, this is the way of success here in the hereafter. And this is one effort today that we are making to learn about these subjects and to make progress in this area. First of all, inform ourselves as Muslims, and then also to carry out this task further, to give this guidance and information to our fellow human beings, our brothers and sisters with whom we live, and we are concerned about the sufferings, whether it's in the health field or whether in the environment, and share with them the guidance which Islam provides in these fields. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Qur'an says, Inna alayna lal huda. It is our responsibility to give the guidance. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, Allahu waliyul lazina amanu yukhrijunahum min az-zulumati ila an-nur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the wali and the guardian and the helper of those who believe, and He brings them from the zulumat, the darkness of ignorance, to the light of the guidance and the hidayah. And as I was saying before, this hidayah covers all area of knowledge. And this area that we are going to address today is certainly also covered in the guidance and hidayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we'll have a glimpse of this today. Certainly it requires our increased interest into this area, particularly those brothers and sisters who have this specialty of medicine, surgery, or they have the specialty of different fields of which are concerned with the environment. We must study this, and we must carry out the further discoveries in this area in the light of this knowledge, so we can be, inshallah, of assistance and help to our fellow brothers and sisters all over the globe. With this introduction, I turn now to our learned brothers and scholars who are here. We have 4 distinguished speakers with us, and the format would be like this. We will invite one by one our brothers to share their views and their deliberations on these subjects with us. And we invite you to listen carefully, and if you have any questions, you please write them down and pass on those questions to us. And at the end of the presentations, we will give ample opportunity to you to listen to the response to your questions. This is being recorded, and inshallah, many of our brothers and sisters will benefit from this program later on from these videotapes which are being recorded today. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite our first speaker, and let me give you a brief introduction. He does not need introduction. He's an eminent speaker and Islamic leader in the field of medicine and also field of community work all across North America, particularly in the South Florida area. Dr. Husain Nagamia, he's the chairman of the International Institute of Islamic Medicine in Braden, Florida, and past president of the Islamic Medical Association. He's a clinical assistant professor of surgery at the University of South Florida Medical School in Tampa, Florida. And he's also attending cardiovascular surgeon at the Cardiac Institute of Florida. He's a well-known speaker and author, and he has been lecturing on the history and current practice of Islamic medicine. He has written papers on this subject, and his institute is doing a tremendous job of finding the manuscripts written by eminent Muslim scholars and physicians in the past and to translate them into English language so as to provide them for the Muslims and the medical community at large. And this is really a great work that's being done, and we all welcome him and invite him to come here and share his scholarly thoughts on the subject of Islamic medicine. Dr. Nagamia.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام Rasul Kareem. It gives me great pleasure to be here with you today. I'm glad that on a rainy Sunday afternoon, all of you have taken the time to come out and be with us. And we hope that we can give you some information about the rich heritage that Islam has in medicine. Most of us who have either studied medicine or have been involved in medicine have come to regard that the highest technology of medicine exists in the West. I, for one, when I graduated from a medical school in India and wanted to further my knowledge, was told that if you want to specialize in surgery, you have to go either to England or to America. Well, I did go to England, and I studied in England surgery. And then I wanted to specialize in heart surgery. So they said, well, heart surgery, you better go to America. And then I came to America. I came to Boston. And that's where I did my specialization in cardiac surgery. And all during this time, I was completely and totally unaware that one of the richest heritage of medicine and surgery existed in my own culture, in my own religion, and in my own, near my own country. With this little introduction, I started to look as to what were the reasons that we have forgotten this entire chapter in history, which is so important for us. So I'm going to give you just a transitory glance at the almost 1,500 years of advancement in medicine and surgery that occurred as Islam became the religion which spread from Spain in the west to China on the east, and from Russia on the north to the northern, almost the middle of Africa in the south. So let's go ahead and begin. Can we dim the lights and have the first slide on, please? Well, as you are all aware, that the first ayah that was revealed to our Prophet was Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Iqra Bismi rabbika allazi khalaq. Khalaqal insana min alaq. Iqra rabbikal akram. Allazi allamal bilqam. Allamal insana allamal ya'lam. Translated, it says that read. Now, as you know, that the Prophet, when the first ayah came to him, was really, he was very worried because, as you know, he was not a man of letters. And he said, I cannot read. And then there was again the order, read. So reading for knowledge became a very important message to all the Muslims. And as you know, that there is a very good hadith which says that in order to acquire knowledge, if you have to travel across continents or across countries, even to the extent of going to China, which was very far away considered at that time, that a Muslim should accomplish that. And as a result, I think that all of us came to these countries where we wanted to acquire knowledge. Well, the Muslims, especially the physicians, came to this country from abroad because they wanted to improve their knowledge in medicine. Several years ago, in 1967, a few of the Muslim physicians got together and formed an association called the Islamic Medical Association of North America. And the Islamic Medical Association has existed since 1967 and has carried out a number of duties which are very relevant to the physicians residing in this country. In any case, I will not go into the depths of this right now, but if you need further information, anybody, especially the physicians, are encouraged to contact me, and I'll be willing to give them information as to what the Islamic Medical Association is all about. About 4 years ago, the Islamic Medical Association decided to form an institute, the International Institute of Islamic Medicine, because they determined that the physicians had a rich heritage, a rich 1,000 years of history that had not been recorded properly by the Western historians. And it was up to us, the Muslim physicians, to try and gather this information and try to present it to not only us, but to the entire humanity so it could benefit them. I have been honored by being appointed the chairman of this institute, and I have served that for the last 4 years. The institute has held 3 conferences so far on the subject of Islamic medicine. 2 of them have been in Orlando, Florida, and 1 of them has been in Pakistan. And we are holding the next meeting in Birmingham, England, which starts on June the 26th of this year. Now, those of you, especially the physicians and those that are interested in health history, you are welcome to come, and this will be a unique experience. What is Islamic medicine? I mean, how can medicine be defined as Islamic or Christian or Jewish or Judaic? Is there such a thing as Islamic medicine? Now, a lot of people come and ask me this question. Well, many people have defined Islamic medicine as different types of medicine, and we have to look at it. Islamic medicine can be, some people have defined the gathering of the sayings of the Prophet that related to health matters in a volume of book called the Prophetic Medicine. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Some of us think Islamic medicine is what is called, quote unquote, Unani medicine. What is Unani medicine? Medicine was actually, as you know, started in the islands of Greece. And the Muslims, when they started ruling the lands, they were very astute. They did not go and burn the books. They did not go and destroy the hospitals and the medical schools that were already in existence. They just took them over and they told the people who were there, who were mostly Christians, Orthodox, that you should continue the work and you should continue to translate this medical works from Greek into Arabic. And this process of what I call the Islamic Renaissance took the early part of the century, as I'm going to show you. Then, actually, this is the part of medicine which we at the Institute define as Islamic medicine. It is the rich history of medicine during the period of the Islamic dominance on the world politics. But Islamic medicine can also be defined in another way, and that is, if we look at modern medicine, one of the most important things that has happened to modern medicine is that it has become a business. If you see all this turmoil that is taking place in modern medicine, including the health maintenance organizations, the insurance problems, the people that are without proper insurance, even in the very advanced nation like the United States of America, we come to the conclusion that what the direction the medicine is taking is not correct. And we as Muslims, we have the inspiration from the Holy Qur'an and the Sunnah to correct the situation in the proper perspective. And this can be done only if we have knowledge not only of the medicine, but also knowledge of Islam. And to define the medicine in a new concept under the laws of the Sharia and the Qur'an and the Hadith is a tremendous task which has not been undertaken after the dominance of Islamic medicine, which lasted for 1,000 years. The early Muslim scientists and physicians, what they did not destroy the knowledge that was there. They assimilated the knowledge, then they converted it to suit the new religion that came to them, which was Islam. They interpreted every tenet of Islam into the medicine, and that was the medicine that was practiced. There is no reason why today we cannot do the same thing. Why we cannot take the modern medicine, which is the highly technologically advanced medicine, and adapt it to Islam, because all that is missing is that the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been erased from the science of medicine by the West. This is a statue of Hippocrates. Hippocrates, as you know, was considered the father of medicine. But literally, actually, nobody knows whether he really wrote the writings that are ascribed to him, because there were several authors that actually wrote this treatise. And here, I visited the island of Kos, where Hippocrates is supposed to have taught. And it's very interesting. If you look at it very carefully, this is the tree under which he taught. And you see there is an inscription in Arabic right there. That is because the Muslims, during their conquest, had taken over the island of Kos. And they took all the treasures, all the writings of the Greeks, and they took it to Baghdad. And that's where it was translated. And they have marked this by this Arabic inscription that is there, which signifies the place where Hippocrates is supposed to have taught. And these are the Romans that kind of gave their own interpretation about Hippocrates. Of course, he had so many sayings and so many medical therapies that he was regarded as a very notable figure. And there were others. Here is a Greek physician that is inscribed in stone who is examining the stomach of a patient. And many such events of physical examination and treatment, etc., were recorded in Greek texts, in the early Greek texts. One of the most famous physicians in Greece was Galen. And in fact, Galen wrote a book, a medical book, that before the advent of Islam was considered as the only textbook of medicine that existed. And the Muslims took this book. In fact, it was Husain ibn Ishaq under the patronage of Khalifa Harun al-Rashid, translated this book at the House of Wisdom, and then the Muslims acquired all this knowledge and then transformed it into the day-to-day activity that they were doing at the time and used it for the benefit of humanity at large. And as you know, perhaps some of you know, that there were a lot of chemicals that Galen described. One of them was what is called namak-e-jali noos. Jali noos means gallon. So soon after the Islamic message was brought by the Prophet, peace be upon him, Islam spread far and wide. The pre-Islamic era of Jahiliyyah ended, and it was replaced by a dynamic type of scientific investigation which took place. In the first, it's so strange, but it took only 200 years for Islam to burn this flame of knowledge, and where every kind of knowledge, not only medicine, but the science of algebra, for instance, started, the science of astronomy started, and all these esoteric, the science of alchemy started, and all these sciences were growing all together at the same time. One of the most important early schools of medicine in Islam was the school of Jundishapur. Jundishapur is a city which is situated in the province of Persia, present Persia, near the city of Ahvaz. It was founded by a Persian king, and as I said that, the city was conquered, and then at that time there were Nestorians, Syrians, and Indians scholars that were working in this school, trying to develop a medical school and hospital. And there were a lot of texts that had been translated, and the Muslims recognized that this was a treasure, that came upon Islam, and that it should not be destroyed. As you know, that many other conquering tribes and heroes, what they did was they conquered the land, and they would then destroy the libraries, kill the learned people, and thereby completely devastate the civilization. In fact, that was to unfortunately happen to Islam later on in the 12th and the 13th centuries, when the Tartars came and started plundering Baghdad. There was a very notable physician, a Christian physician called Boccaccio. Now, although he was a Christian, the Khalifa recognized that this was the man who had the highest knowledge of medicine in the conquered Islamic lands. So what he did was the Khalifa invited him to Baghdad to form the first hospital and to form the first clinic, and he became his patron. So Ibn Masawi, one of the other physicians from the school of Jundishapur, came to Baghdad, and he started a school. And from this school, then there were a lot of Muslim physicians that was trained. One of the earliest physicians that was trained was Ar-Razi. And I'll tell you about him later on. Again, the early physicians in Islam were all Christians. Even Husain ibn Ishaq, who is regarded as a very foremost physician in Baghdad at the time, he became an ophthalmologist. He wrote several books on treatises on ophthalmology and was the personal physician to the king, to the Khalifa, and he was a Christian. And yet he had a very, very big position. In fact, later on in the history of Islam, it is one of the important facts that we should know that there were Jews also that were personal physicians to the king. One of the notable examples is Ibn Maymun, or Maimonides, who was a Jew. And he became the personal physician to Saladin, even during the Crusades. And therefore, Islam had this tolerance towards every religion. And what was regarded high in the esteem was not whether you were a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. What was regarded high was that you had knowledge and you had the capacity to perform. Thus, the era of Islamic medicine spanned for 1,000 years. Do you know that for 1,000 years there was no other medicine practiced in the whole of the world? Europe was in dark ages. The only thing that they knew at the time was if there was somebody sick, they would start superstition, they would start burning things in front or offering animals in sacrifice, and that is all they could do. And if the person died, it was too bad. There were no hospitals in the West at the time, and all the advancement in medicine was taking place in the Islamic world, especially in the early part in Baghdad. The greatest impetus to the acquisition of knowledge occurred because of formation of what is called the House of Wisdom or Baytul Hikmah. It was founded in 214 AD or 830 AD or 214 Hijrah by Khalif al-Mamun in the Abbasid period. Ibn Nadim, who is a notable historian, he lists 57 translators that were there employed by the House of Wisdom. And these people, they translated from every language. They were translated from Syrian, mainly from Greek and Syrian, but they also translated from Indian language, Sanskrit. They also translated from Chinese. And all this thing was collected in this big library, which was called the House of Wisdom or Baytul Hikmah. Here is what it must have looked like. This is an artist's impression of what the scholars and the investigators look like. This is a learning session that is going on in the Baytul Hikmah. And everything was learned. I mean, in the West, not much is recognized about this, and unless we really investigate this, we do not come to know. Anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, pharmacotherapeutics, chemistry, allied sciences, including, of course, medicine requires all the other allied sciences to develop. Otherwise, it cannot develop by its own. Mathematics, including, as you know, algebra was discovered by the Arabs, geometry, alchemy, and so forth. Here are some of the early renditions of anatomy. Now, funnily, the Western authors in their historical books mention that Muslims were averse to dissection and Muslims did not know much about anatomy. Therefore, they did not do much about surgery. But that's wrong. That's totally wrong. Here are some of the illustrations of early dissections. What they did was they either correlated it from animals. Ibn Masawi, for instance, has been known to have dissected apes in order to know the anatomy, because human body was regarded as sacred. And here are some of the other. This is the nervous system and the circulatory system and the digestive system. And these are some of the early illustrations. These are some pressure points and points which shows that there was some Chinese influence. Early acupuncture was known to the Arabs. They also, one of the sciences that really developed very fast and steady and became very well known was the science of optics and ophthalmology. And as I told you, that Husain ibn Ishaq was the one that wrote a treatise on optics and ophthalmology. I apologize for this slide being upside down. both of these slides. And this rich knowledge was very soon accumulated and was transformed and being utilized practically. Did you know that the first hospital in the world was built in Islamic lands? That in fact the Khalifa recognized the work of the Bakhtishu and Ibn Masawi, and they invited them to come to Baghdad to have the first hospital. And this first hospital was built in Baghdad and became a thriving institution. It was later on that Ar-Razi, who was a very astute Muslim physician, became a student of this school and then became an independent physician by himself and founded one of the largest of the hospitals in Baghdad. And it is a very interesting story that in order to select the site of the hospital, he was asked, how are you going to select? He was asked by the Caliph, where are you going to build the hospital? What he did was he took some pieces of meat and he had them hung in the various places. I mean, this man was so much before his time. He hung it in various places, and where the meat rotted the worst, he knew that that was the worst place to put a hospital in. So he put the hospital in a place where the meat had rotted the least, knowing that this is the place where infection would be the least. Of course, at that time, there was no knowledge about microbes or bacteria, and this was completely, this was his observation, and this is how he discovered. Of course, he was the one that also wrote a complete treatise about smallpox, and he distinguished it from chickenpox and measles, and his standard paper on this became a very great inspiration to these scientists in the West. The methods of learning were that people were either attached to a tutor, there was bedside teaching, there were seminars, documentations, and continuous medical education. There were houses of science. These are some of the houses of science that are listed. They were Al-Masawli in Iraq, Dar al-Ilm in Baghdad, Dar al-Hikmah in Cairo, and of course there was later on, in the later part of the Islamic period, there was a great stride in Spain. In the 900 to 1100 AD, there was an extreme amount of activity in the West, in Cordoba. And this is actually where the knowledge of all these sciences was then taken up by the West, which was until then completely in ignorance and in the dark ages. This was all supported by building of private libraries like the Treasure of Wisdom in Bukhara. Ibn Sina had libraries which were incredible, which contained lots of books, up to 40,000. They said that in the library of Cordoba, there were at least about 1 million books. And this was the one that actually generated which was transformed, which was later on, as the Islamic Empire in the Spain declined, was then transformed into Latin and then into other European languages by translators like Gerard of Cremora and Africanus in the North African continent. And then this is how the West came to know anything at all about the Greek medicine. There was no direct translation of any of the books, of the Greek books, into any of the European languages. It was only through Arabic that they learned about the entire ancient Greek history. Well, I'll very quickly pass through the most important physicians in the Islamic era. There were Bakhtishu that I mentioned, Masawiya, Husain ibn Ishaq, then Ali ibn Rabbani al-Tabbari. He wrote a complete treatise of about 40 volumes. Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi, I already mentioned to him. And then al-Majusi and al-Zahrawi. Al-Zahrawi was one of the foremost surgeons that existed during the Islamic era. In fact, people didn't even know that he existed. As notable physician as John Hunter in England, who, for those of you who are surgeons may know that John Hunter was a very famous surgeon in England in the early part of the 19th century. He read the books of Az-Zahrawi, and the books were written under the name of Albucasis because they were Latinized. The names were Latinized. The names were purposely Latinized so that people misunderstood that these were some Latin authors, and the credit was not given to the Muslims. In his letter, which he wrote as a commentary on the works of Al-Zahrawi, John Hunter wrote, "I'm not quite certain who this guy is, but it sounds to me that he may be the same Arab physician or Arab surgeon that practiced in Cordoba in the late 900s or 1000 AD. So you see that Al-Zahrawi was called Al-Bucasis, Al-Razi was called Razan or Razes, Ibn Sina was called Avicenna, and each one of them, Ibn Rushd was called I forget his name in the Latinized name. Averroes. So these names were completely changed, and therefore, even the Western authors that studied these were not able to assign them to the proper authors that existed. Here are some of the early illustrations. Here is a student of Bakhtishu being taught and about medicine. This was one-to-one instruction. Now, talking about prophetic medicine, during the same time when the medicine was being evolved as a logical science, there was a collection of hadiths which related to health matters, which were collected under one volume, and it was done by various authors. And this came to be known as prophetic medicine. Now, as you know, our Prophet was very, very cognizant about health matters. He prescribed that you should be very clean, and I mean, therefore, the hadith that if cleanliness is half of the faith. Also that, you know, Islam was the only religion that required you to be clean before you prayed. You had to have the ghusl and the wudu before you went to pray. None of the Western religions required or prescribed that you should be clean before you go to pray. And there were lots of other anecdotes which are assigned to our Prophet, which were collected in this book. I read a recent translation, and I was amazed at the knowledge of medicine that the Prophet had. Although he was supposed to be an unlettered man, he never had formal education. He had very in-depth knowledge. Like, for instance, an infection, one Sahaba came to him with a boil on his hand. So the Payghambar said to one of his other Ashabi that, go ahead, heat a knife and then lance it. Now here, sterilization and then lancing it, which is the treatment of choice. And so on and so forth. You can keep on reading this. Now, the other part of the prophetic medicine also ascribed to the fact that there was power in the healing in the verses of the Qur'an. And the Prophet used to very frequently invoke the benefit of reciting the surahs. A very classical example is that somebody came to him with a scorpion bite. And what he did is he recited the Surah Al-Ikhlas 3 times, and he just kind of prayed on it, and the man was fine after that. So there is this power in the Qur'an, which we still have not known how to harness. And quite a lot of this is given in this medicine, which we need to harness and learn. Imam Ibn Qayyum al-Jawaziyah was amongst the first to translate in the late 14th century. He translated the book and collected all these works under one heading called the Prophetic Medicine, or it was also called Tibb-e-Nabawi. And this is the modern version of it. Brother Muhammad al-Akil, who's Imam up in Philadelphia, has just published this book, which came out, I think, about 2 years ago. And he was gracious enough to send me a copy, which you can read, and it's very, very informative about what the Prophet used as forms of medicine. The mosque was, of course, the center of all activity at one time, and this is another thing that we should learn, that mosque is not only meant for prayer, that the mosque should be the place of learning, the place of discourse, the place of dissemination of information, and the place of congregation. That it was actually the center of Islamic activity. Unfortunately, once we became subjugated by the West, we lost all that, and now the mosque has become just a place of worship where we go, and then we come back, and then we don't think much about it. So we have to revive all this. And as the mosque developed, there were the libraries that were created, the houses of science, and so forth. I'm not going to waste too much time on this. And very great institution and libraries developed as a result of this. And as I told you, the notable amongst them was the one in Baghdad, the one in Cairo, the one in Damascus, and the one in Cordoba in the West. These are some of the ones, the Granada, the Al-Azhar. You are, I'm sure, familiar with these institutions. One of the most important other things that Islam introduced to the West is that, physicians in the West at the time, anybody could call himself wear the hat of a physician and start practicing, whether he was a quack or whether he was a true person who had learned some medicine. But under the Islamic rule, especially in Italy, the first time that they introduced regulation to see that the physician that practiced has proper knowledge. That means there was actual licensing. And this was also then extended through the whole Islamic empire into the East as well, into the Eastern Khilafat. There were lots and lots of eminent physicians, and I don't think I'll have time to go through all that, but I might be able to show you a few pictures about them. Husain ibn Ishaq, Al-Razi, which I already told you about, he was a clinician. These are their contributions, and these are the books that they wrote. They wrote voluminous amounts of books. And I'm going to tell them, I'm going to select a few of these. These are the original contributions that they made to the development of medical science. And of course, you'd have to devote a lot of time to try and get to know these details. For instance, Abu Bakr Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi, he was born in the year 850. He died in the year 932, Christian era. He was born in Persia. He became the greatest physician of the Middle Ages. He worked in Baghdad at the time of Mansur ibn Ishaq. He wrote 237 books. He was the first to distinguish between smallpox and measles. He started psychiatry, pediatrics, and all the subspecialties. And his greatest works were Al-Hawi, Al-Tibb al-Mansuri, Al-Mujarrabat, and Al-Tibb al-Ruhani. Here is a picture of him. Of all places, this is in Philadelphia, in the University of Philadelphia. Thank you. This is Ibn Sina, the most famous Muslim physician, he was, as you know, the Latinized name was Avicenna. This is his book called Qanun fil Tibb. I apologize for it being upside down here. This is the first page of the book. This was written in Persia. This is Al-Zahrawi, who I already told you about as the most famous surgeon in the history of Islam. He wrote the first textbook of surgery, which was having illustrations, including all the instruments. This is the forceps, which he described for forceps delivery, especially in a dead fetus. These are special tongs that he described for extraction of foreign body. And there are thousands of instruments. Now this manuscript that is there are only 4 manuscripts of his original works that exist. And one of them is in India, in the Khudabakhsh library. And this is where I got the pictures from. This is of a syringe. He was the first to use a syringe. I mean, syringe is such a common thing now, but he was the first to use a syringe to irrigate and to clear the bladder and so forth. And here he is shown in a Turkish text trying to extract some teeth. And here he is trying to work on hemorrhoids. This is a Turkish illustration of Al-Zahrawi's works. This is a cesarean section that is being performed on a dead fetus. And so the Muslims were not completely not knowing anything about obstetrics and gynecology and surgery. They did know a considerable amount. This is Ibn Nafis, who was in the later part of the Islamic period. He was the first to describe the circulation, although in the Western books, it's always mentioned that William Harvey discovered the circulation. But if you read carefully, it is Ibn Nafis who described the lesser circulation, and this is his concept. Prior to Ibn Nafis, it was thought that the right side of the heart and the left side of the heart were connected, and there were actual pores through which the blood passed through. Ibn Nafis very categorically stated in his manuscript that there was no connection between the left and the right side of the heart, and that the blood circulated through the lungs before it came back to the left side of the heart. So I think, the Islamic era was indeed an era which we should be proud of, which unfortunately we don't know much, but we need to investigate, and we need to continue to work on. I gave you just a glimpse of history. Of course, this takes a lot of time to go through the details, but all of us, if we take up some aspects of this works, and that's what we do in the conference which are undertaken by the International Institute, of which there are 3, that we take each aspect of this, either work on a single physician or one of their works, and then we expound on it and see how does it relate to modern medicine. And this is the important question that we have to answer. And that is what the function of the Institute is. I hope I have given you a little gist, a little flying, fleeting kind of glimpse at the rich heritage and history of more than 1,500 years. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair.